Module 4. Using the SensorTile.box PRO in expert mode. In this module, we will use the STBLE sensor mobile application and SensorTile.box PRO in expert mode. We will see what options exist for creating custom configurations, how to easily create and upload a custom application configuration, and how to interact with a custom configuration running on the SensorTile. Expert mode allows you to further customize and experiment with the sensors in the SensorTile.box PRO evaluation kit. Although it is more advanced than entry mode, it is still easy to use and no software coding is needed. Using this mode, we can design our own app by selecting specifically which sensors we are interested in, configure the operational characteristics of each sensor, process the sensor data using a variety of built-in function blocks, and finally send the data to the user via either Bluetooth or USB, or store the data on the SD card for later evaluation. Let's get started. First, please open the STBLE sensor mobile application. Then scan for devices and connect to your SensorTile, as we did in the previous module. Once connected, the app will display the list of available features. As we did previously in entry mode, we'll start by scrolling down to the bottom of this list, tapping on Flow. Here we see the same list of predefined configurations that we saw previously in entry mode. Now, rather than tapping on one of the categories, instead tap on Expert View. We now see a new screen which shows options for creating and loading custom apps. This list is currently empty since we have not yet created any custom app. There are three options presented: New App, If, and Load Saved Flow. The button labeled New App allows us to define a custom app flow. The If button allows you to chain a function block's logical expression output to the input of another function, like a standard if-then conditional, and the Load Saved Flow button allows you to load a pre-made custom configuration into memory. To create a new custom app, tap on the New App button. We'll create an app that calculates the fast Fourier transform of accelerometer data and streams this FFT data over BLE to the STBLE sensor app. To generate the signal for analysis, we can simply shake the board along one of the three axes. This screen shows the overall app flow. Starting at the top, we choose the source or sources for the input signal. Then we send this data stream to an optional function block for processing. And lastly, we choose an output destination. Let's do each of these step by step. The first step is to select an input source. To do so, tap on the Select Input Source box. Now we are presented with a list of available sensors. There are many to choose from. All onboard physical sensors are present here, as well as several virtual sensors. For this exercise, we will use the physical accelerometer sensor. Enable the accelerometer sensor by tapping the selector switch. This is the onboard LSM6DSV16X accelerometer. Once enabled, scroll down to the bottom of the list and tap Done. Our input selection now shows the accelerometer that we selected. Next to this, on the right, there is a gear icon. Tap that icon to configure the sensor. Here we have several parameters we can adjust to suit our needs. For this exercise, we can ignore the acquisition time field, as we want the acquisition to be active continuously. For the power mode, tap the button next to high performance mode. For the output data rate, or ODR, choose 60 Hz. This is a high enough sampling rate to allow for capturing the shaking motion that we will impart when generating the data for FFT. Set the low-pass filter selection to no filter. Leave the high-pass filter selection set to the default of no filter. Finally, set the full scale to 4G. This represents the maximum acceleration that the device will measure, and 4Gs should be plenty for the shaking motion that we'll use. Finally, tap Done at the bottom to save the configuration. Now we will choose a function block for processing the data. Note that a function block is optional. If I wanted only the raw data to be streamed or logged, we could skip this block and go directly to the output section. However, let's add the fast Fourier transform block here. To do so, tap on the Choose a Function button. There are several function blocks to choose from. Tap the selector next to FFT to select it. Then tap Done at the bottom. We see the FFT block is now active and takes the raw accelerometer data as input. As we did with the accelerometer, let's make one configuration change to the FFT block. To do so, tap the gear icon next to the FFT function name. Change the number of frequencies to produce setting to 64. This will result in more frequent updates of the output. After setting this value to 64, tap Done to save and return to the previous screen. Finally, the last step is to configure the destination for the processed data. To do so, tap on the Choose Output button. Now we are shown a list of destinations to which the app can send the FFT data. Enable the option to stream to Bluetooth. This will send instantaneous FFT data to our mobile app. Other options include saving the data to the SD card so that a full data log can be analyzed later, streaming over USB for cases where the sensor tile is connected to your PC, or save as input, in which case this function block's output can be chosen as an input source for another app. Note that we could send this output to multiple simultaneous destinations. For example, we could stream to Bluetooth as well as save the data to the SD card. This would be useful if we needed to analyze the data later in detail. For now, we will output to Bluetooth only. Tap Done to save the configuration and return to the previous screen. We are done creating a new custom app flow and can now save this configuration as a new app. To do so, tap Save App at the bottom of the screen. All that's left is to give the app a name. Enter the name FFT in the name field. The description field is optional and we'll leave it blank. Tap Save App to finish. The app will present you with the Android File Explorer so that you can choose where to save the configuration file. The default location should be fine, although you can change this if desired. Tap Save at the bottom to finish. We are now returned to the list of custom apps, and our new app is visible here. Let's upload it to the SensorTile.box PRO and see the new app in action. Tap the app to open it. This shows us the configuration we just entered. Tap the play button to upload it to your board. Tap Upload on the next screen to confirm. Remember, this is not overwriting the firmware, but just uploading a new configuration file that the firmware reads and acts upon. After a few seconds, the upload will be complete. Tap the Done button to disconnect from the board. The board will reinitialize with the new configuration. After a few seconds, the board should reappear in the list of available devices. If it does not, tap the double-headed arrow at the bottom to rescan. Reconnect to your board. After we reconnect, we see that the list of functions has changed again. We now have an icon labeled FFT Amplitude, which matches the expected output of our custom application. Tap this icon to initiate data capture. The app will draw a new FFT amplitude plot. This plot will update each time new data is sent from the sensor tile, in this case roughly every 2 seconds. This plot shows the FFT for each of the X, Y, and Z accelerometer axes. If the sensor tile is left stationary and flat on a desk, the X and Y axes are both 0 with no frequency components. The Z-axis shows a single frequency component at 0 Hz with a magnitude of approximately 1 G as expected. This 1 G is the force of gravity acting along the Z-axis of the sensor tile. Now shake your sensor tile along the Y-axis. This is the long end of the sensor tile. Notice how the graph changes now. The new impulse is shown with a magnitude representing the degree of acceleration being imparted at the frequency at which the board is shaken. Recall here that the FFT function is part of the app configuration that we created and appears in the program flow before the data is sent over BLE. In this case, this means that the FFT calculation is being performed on the sensor tile. Only the results of the FFT calculation are sent over BLE, not the raw accelerometer data. This minimizes the required data transfer. If we were instead logging data to the SD card, this would minimize the data written. As we've seen here, Expert Mode allows us to create a wide variety of application configurations to experiment with the functionality of the sensor tile, with easy integration into the STBLE sensor mobile application for immediate user feedback. All can be done without needing to write any firmware program code. Additionally, this can all be accomplished wirelessly, and custom apps can save data logs on the SD card to enable fast prototyping for cases where it might be inconvenient to tether the sensor tile to a PC. Now that we are familiar with Expert Mode, we will move on to Pro Mode in the next module, where we will discuss how to use custom firmware with the SensorTile.box PRO. To prepare for this, we need to make sure that the platform is set to boot from Bank 1 of flash memory. When we updated the factory firmware earlier, this would have been downloaded to Bank 2 and the platform configured to boot from this second bank. So let's change that now to prepare for the next module. Go back to the main screen of the STBLE sensor app and then tap on Board Configuration. This section may appear grayed out with a lock icon at the right side. If so, this means you need to log into your MyST account to access this section. This is needed because the app allows you to download new firmware images directly to your sensor tile from ST's servers, and this feature is only available once logged in. In this case, after you tap Board Configuration, you'll be informed that it is locked until you log in. Tap OK to continue, and the app will redirect you to the MyST login portal. From this screen, please log in using your existing MyST account, or you can scroll to the bottom of the screen to create a new account if you do not already have one. Once logged in, you'll be returned to the main screen of the STBLE sensor app, where you can tap the board configuration section again to access it. In this section, there are a variety of details about the low-level state of the board and the firmware. Some items are configurable, such as the name of the board. This could be useful in situations where you need to differentiate between multiple boards. In the top section, titled Board Report, tap on Info. This will give you information about the firmware running on the board, its version number, and which flash bank it is running on. At the bottom of this information screen, find where it shows the current flash bank. This is the last line in the info box. If it says current bank equals 1, you don't need to do anything, and you can close this window and close the STBLE sensor app. However, if it says the current bank equals 2, please follow the next steps. First, tap OK to close this window. Then scroll down to the board control section. Tap on Firmware Swap. This will change the boot configuration of your board so that it boots from flash bank number 1. For the change to take effect, go back 2 screens to the screen titled Available Boards. This will cause your app to disconnect from your board and will cause your board to reset with the new settings. You may now close the STBLE sensor app. In this module, we used the STBLE sensor mobile application and SensorTile.box PRO in expert mode. We saw that many options exist for creating custom configurations, how to easily create and upload a custom application configuration, and how to interact with a custom configuration running on the sensor tile. We have only seen a small example of the power of expert mode, and as with entry mode, we encourage you to come back to this after you complete the workshop and experiment with different custom app configurations. This concludes Module 4.